Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. This is the 6th Global Power Platform Bootcamp, Poland 2025. And today's session I'm going to speak on is Automate Like a Pro, Power FX Edition. So before I introduce myself, I would like you to guess where I am from. Any guesses?
You can answer on the chat.
Yeah. Norway? Iran? Okay. Nope. Okay. So I'm from Canada, and this is the background of my backyard. Okay.
Nice.
All right. So I'm Samir Makwana. I'm from Canada. I'm a cloud solution architect and a global speaker. I speak on many events, and my area of expertise are Power Platform, Copilot Studio, Microsoft 365. I do a little bit of cybersecurity because that's how every solution nowadays goes along. And yeah, it's very critical piece as well. And automation is love, and it's one of my favorite things to do when I work with different clients. And I also build custom software solutions too. So this is my LinkedIn QR code. If you would like to connect with me later on, if you have any follow-up question, feel free to connect with me. All right. There we go. Yeah. So if there's any attendees which are
I think we have lost you. Samir? Let's wait for Samir to reconnect. I will try to reach Samir. Maybe he's just talking to himself. I think
hey everyone, my apologies.
No problem.
My router just got restarted because of there was a power glitch, and yeah, my apologies for that.
It happens.
All right. Yeah. So let me start again, and I don't know what you saw last, but let me know.
Just this one with the captions.
The captions? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So as I said, if you are using different languages, then please feel free to use different captions so that you can take a benefit out of that. Moving to the next. Right. So today's agenda, for this session. I'm going to talk about the approach, how the structure of this session will be quickly, and then we'll jump on to introduction of PowerFX, which is originally from Excel. So just want to know how many of you already worked on, I'm sure at some point of time in your career, you, or maybe right now as well, you deal with Excel and different formulas. And if you know that, PowerFX is nothing but the cherry on the top, and you're using those the same functionality and the same language in a different tools now, okay? And then we'll jump onto the basics of PowerFX. We'll do some comparison between traditional language versus PowerFX. And I'll show you a little demo, how the PowerFX looks like in a real life scenarios. And then it's not a best practices, but then we'll talk about the key takeaways, and I'll open up the floor for question answer as well. But there is now, as we are, so the approach of this session will be, we'll deep dive into theory, then we'll go and transition into demos, and then there will be a quiz, because I would like to see how much attention you are paying and what you're taking out of this session as well. So it will be fun. It's a very light questions I created for you guys. So it's based on Slido. You can use your phone or QR code, or you can use your computer as well to join the quiz. And we'll open up the floor for question answer, and there will be a feedback at the end. So please feel free to use your phone or computer to provide a feedback on the session. All right, so without further ado, introduction to PowerFX. So as I mentioned earlier, throughout our career, we work on Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and many Office applications, and specifically Excel. That's where we do lots of calculations. We do use different formulas, and we take a value of those things and do many data manipulation as well, right? So similar low-code, no-code language, PowerFX named as, also being used from a while into Power Apps. And now Microsoft has extended that low-code, no-code language, PowerFX, to different Power Platform tools as well, such as Power Platform Desktop, Power Automate Desktop. And that's it. That will be the part of the demo today I'm going to show you. As per Microsoft, they're going to integrate or allow this PowerFX to be used across the Power Platform dashboard, like across the all the apps eventually. And also there is the plan of making it open source. If I'm not wrong, there are some libraries also available which you can use to create your own function in the code as open source too. So what is low-code, no-code language, PowerFX? So as I said, it's an Excel-based thing. So let's say if I need to do any automation where I need to do a sum of a specific column values in that array, then I can use the sum function, and I can have that specific column values sum and have a total out of it. So Excel is like a syntax. Excel-like syntax, so there is no difference. There is nothing you need to learn new compared to the traditional languages where you learn different syntaxes. So if you know Excel, this is going to be fun and more easier for you to build something very quickly and easily. And it is declarative and functional, which means so you define the purpose and conditions, what you need, and you let the system do the work for you, and it do the work. Like if you define a if condition, for example, if average value greater than 20, send alert, or else continue whatever you're doing, right? So you declare it and let the system handle it, okay? Also, there will be an auto recalculation. So if the value of that average or so in the previous example, as I mentioned, there's an average value greater than 20, right? So if that average value filled, the variable value changes, then the condition automatically recalculate and define the path of the automation further, and also give the values accordingly. And as I mentioned earlier, there is the open source piece which is coming up, which will be really helpful to do lots of enhancement and custom coding, and it will be very useful to integrate many third parties. Even right now, you can use PowerFX to do lots of customization and integration. For example, when I send an email, I try to customize my I put dynamic expression into my email body and subject line. So based on the input values and variable values, I choose to define what kind of body of email I want to send out to the users or the respective people, right? So let's jump on the basics. So PowerFX have tons of formulas and operators and data types, tables, variables, and so many things. There is no way we can finish it in 1 hour or 50 minutes, right? But at very high level, we're going to touch base on the things which I think which will be in daily use. You will be using it or might be helpful throughout your automation. So the way I do it is when I have any automation request, I try to see what are the things I'm going to use. I create the inventory out of it, and I try to create a workflow, and then I go from there. So let's start with the operator and data types or formulas. So operators and formulas are, I would say, there are different types of operators: arithmetic, comparisonal, logical, string, and date and time, and array, and so on. And there are some formulas as well associated with them as well. So for example, with or for all, or there will be one which we'll be using eventually in the demo called filter or lookup, right? And there are some comparison operator, which is we're going to use in the if-else condition as well. So, and keep in mind, when these are the very basic things you're going to use if you are working on PowerFX day in, day out, because there will be a time we will be working on a date. There is a table I used to work where I used to manipulate the date and need to create a new columns and values out of it. I used to get so many times, need to add and date difference and so on, right? So these operators and formulas are very handy when we work on any automations. And these are not only the list, there is a bunch of lists on the Microsoft Learn website, and I'll share that link later in this presentation as well. So tables and variables. So tables are like multi-dimensional array. You can store values in a structured format, similar to Excel spreadsheet, and I'll show it in my demo as well how it looks like. But one thing I noticed when I was preparing this demo for you all recently, maybe just because my Power Desktop having that or my tenant having certain limitations, might not be at your end too, but whenever I try to model the data or manipulate the data, there is a need of defining tables so that I can use certain functions in PowerFX to manipulate those data. So for example, there is a function called show column. If I need to use that, I need to make sure the whatever the variable I am trying to manipulate the data for, it's a table data type, right? So So there's a difference between tables and variable. Most of the time, variable we use to hold the data temporarily for a specific cell value, for example, if I'm manipulating specific cell out of the Excel spreadsheet, right? Or if I'm asking for user input and then I'm using that input throughout my automation, then I store that into the variable and I use it in different phases, right? And I'll show that in the demo as well, where I use the variables. So defining a table, you just need to use equal sign table and parentheses, and you can do it manually like I just showed up on my screen, or else you can also have one file read out of Excel or different data sources, and you can load those data into the table. So let's talk about dynamic expression and conditional logic. So it's very important because when you create a workflow or the automation for any business processes, there are times where you need to use the dynamic values, and those values will change the how the flow gonna go based on whatever the conditional logic you have put into that flow. So for example, in today's demo, I'm gonna talk about how restaurant industry is leveraging my Power Automate Desktop or our robotic process automation to automate some of their work, and how it can be used in different industries as well, right? So for example, I was working with one of the clients the other day, and what I noticed, there was a requirement of paying them in a different wages based on their title. Also, there was a requirement of paying them um, 1.5 of whatever they are getting paid in regular hours versus when they work on holidays or weekend or after hours, right? So based on the date and time of the login logout values, the flow has to change, and those are very dynamic and real-time calculations. And based on different condition, it changed the whole flow. And that's where the power effects, if our switch condition or functions are really helpful to define those workflow. So for example, right, I used to use this when I was in university, when I was learning programming languages. It's a similar logic, but it's Excel based formula and very simple to read. So if my score is greater than 60, I pass or I fail. So whatever we used to do in Excel, the similar formula we use in PowerFX. And I'll show it in a demo as well. So PowerFX versus traditional programming language, there are tons of things available on the internet to compare. We don't really need to compare, but I feel like it's very important for a specific group of users. Like, for example, I don't want to learn programming language if I am just a business user who is helping on some of the workflow being created. And I just want to know the PowerFX because I'm using Excel a lot. That's why it's a low code, no code approach. There are some cases as well, where we still relying on traditional programming languages, but the learning curve for those languages is not as easy as the PowerFX if I compare, because PowerFX is in a system from along, and it's a very accessible language, even for the non-developers users, and it's easy for them to understand and implement, which helps them promote rapid developments on their automation. Um, the only drawback I found is, and I don't know how and when, it all depends on what automation you create, but PowerFX basically not or none or less control over system resources, whereas programming languages like Java, Python, and C#, you can go and actually control the system resources as well. So any questions before I move on for the demo?
Actually, there is one comment in the chat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Morris, so I use Power Automate, and I'm going to show it in a demo as well, where I export the data out of Excel and store it in a table format, and then I manipulate the data as I go to just meet my automation requirement. So that's what I was trying to say with export the data, store it in a table so that we can manipulate and manage the table more easier and the best way to get output out of it. So for example, there is a two Excel data I want to merge. I import both the data, I'll put it in a table, then I merge those tables with the specific Power Effect code, and then I output it into the new Excel if I need to. What is the better, table or a collection? For Power Automate Desktop, I find table. But if I'm using Power Apps, I might rely on collection, but still, it's depends on what kind of automation you're doing and how we're gonna leverage those things, right? So let me go back to my Power Automate Desktop. Let me know if you are able to see it.
Yes,
Yeah,
you can see
yeah.
it.
Wonderful, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna use a variable. But before I go and start describing this flow, what I have, it's not a complete flow. It's a piece of the automation somewhere in a real world scenario. So for example, I have a client of restaurant industry. They have multiple restaurants, a restaurant chain, and they were having a requirement of payrolls management. They have a requirement of inventory management. They have requirements of maintenance and employee management and so on. So this is one of the requirements where the client wanted to know if there is a price changes into the food supply. So for example, they were purchasing a chicken or any food, which was at a price of $20. Now the price has changed, which is impacting overall food costs for the business, right? So the price has changed from 20 to 80, for example, then it needs to be alerted to the business and they should take whatever the action they need to take after that. But the alert should be triggered. So what I'm going to show you today, it's a middle of the automation phase where we're going to read the data from the Excel file for all the invoices we received in that 1 year from those suppliers. And we're going to find out the average value of that specific food product. And if that average value exceeds certain number, then alert the respective people to take further action. Then alert will be email alert, as well as there will be pop-up on the screen just to show you guys how that pop-up works. Okay. So that's the overall of this workflow. There is a workflow before that as well. If I get a chance, I'll show you where I extract the data out of those invoices and put it in an Excel file as well. So just to show you a glimpse, it's a real world scenario. It's one of the invoice, looks like this in a PDF. We extract the data out of that. We create an Excel file. And let me show you that Excel file as well. How does it look? All right. So this is a structured data got created out of these invoices we receive over a period of time. So what are the columns we are using? We are using quantity shipped, quantity ordered, brand, pack and weight, supplier code, product description, item number, and price. Of course, it's very important for us to know, and also invoice number. So if I need to go back and track back where was the price gaps are, right? Then I can use that invoice number and the dates as well. So we're going to use this data. It's pretty big, but we're going to use this data to find out certain stuff. And so let's deep dive into the flow and see how I leverage that. So to begin with, because I want to make sure that every year there's a new data set got created with the new data into it, right? So what I did, I set a variable called folder path where I'm going to put all my data Excels as we go. And I'm going to use the same folder path into this flow so that I can read the same Excel file from those folder paths, right? So the way it is configured, it's pretty straightforward. It's a text value, folder path, nothing complex. However, I want to read data out of that Excel file. So what I'm doing, I'm using one of the function of Power Automate Desktop called attach running Excel, because I already opened that Excel file. I'm attaching the Power Automate Desktop to that Excel file, and what I need to give as an input, I need to give the open file name, which is middle, like the demo.excel. Important thing to note here is the Excel instance, that's a variable it's going to refer to as the output of this specific attached to running. So when the Power Automate Desktop attached to Excel, it will go and store all those handles into the Excel instance so that it can be leveraged in the later stage. But think about a scenario, if I don't have Excel already open, what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch Excel, and that's where one of the Power FX function being used. Because if I need to launch Excel file, like opening an Excel file so that I can do that reading of the data and stuff, I need to provide a Excel file path. And how I do it, because I have a variable created for the folder path, I'm going to concatenate with the file name so that I can have the complete file path with me, and I can use that as an input to launch that specific Excel file. Okay. All right. The next one, we're going to read from Excel file. Right. So now we don't need to put the file path again because we already attached the running Excel file, or we launched the Excel file and we put that into one of the variable Excel instance where those process handles are stored. And when we read data from Excel, we need to store somewhere. So this is the place we are storing it, Excel data. Now, when I was building this lab for you, I noticed it was not being treated as a table format. I don't know, and all the further calculation on those data, Excel data, was not giving me appropriate results. And that's where I need to define that extracted Excel data into a table format or value. So you can see I use the same Excel data and I have defined the table out of it. So the way I just put a name as PFX table so that I can leverage that PFX table to manipulate further details out of it. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to leverage one of the function in PowerFX called lookup, because I have a scenario where I need to look up specific invoice number into that whole Excel data. So there are different ways to find or filter the data out of the table. One is lookup, another is the filter, and the third one is the search function. So there are three functions. So lookup function, the way it is different from filter and search is when I do a lookup in that whole data for a specific invoice number, it will start searching from top, and what are the first value it finds into that table, it will return the full row of that first value. So let me go back here and show it to you in Excel. So let's say I search for this invoice number, right? And it start doing a lookup. So what it will do, return as an output, it will return this whole line, the first line where it find the match. So it will return the output of that row where it find that value at first time, and then it will stop. The filter on the other side, the filter function or the search function, what it do is basically it go and search and find all the matching rows where that invoice number matches. So for example, if we are searching for invoice number 1691300, sorry, 3050, then it's going to show us 43 rows as an output. Okay. And when we run this flow, I'll show you the different values and it will show us how it is different. And this is where the filter values get complex as well. Because filter value has multiple rows, we need to store it in a table format so that we can manipulate that values as well further. So what I did to filter, the syntax for the filter is which table you want to filter onto, the record, what column you want to filter onto, and what is the value for the filter. Now, you remember I was explaining operators? This is where I'm using the logical AND operator for this filter, where I'm saying filter not only based on the invoice number, but also based on the price, the total price column, where the total price should be greater than $100, right? And give me those rows out of it. And the third one I'm going to do is whatever the total price I'm getting out of it, I'm going to make a sum of all the total price for the specific invoice. And I'm going to use that as an output saying that this invoice having this total, which I can use to match with my invoice value eventually. This section of the code or the flow is finding the average of the total price of the specific product. So if you see, I put a filter, it's getting a little complex here. So I'm using filter onto the table for the column product description, where I'm trying to find the product type chicken breast. And once I have the filter data, I'm gonna find out the average total price for that product. And I'm gonna round up that value by 2 decimal points, as you can see. And I'll show you the output as well soon when I run this. Another thing I'm doing it is if the average price of that product is greater than 70, that's what I mentioned here, but to show up the pop-up, let me change it to 20. Right? So what condition I'm doing here is I'm saying if the average price of the product is greater than 20, then show up this message with the average price value, or else show something else. And that way I'm defining what custom message or dynamic message I want to show up based on the average price of the product. And at the end, I'm triggering an email alert to send an email out to respective team. It is for me right now, but yeah, that is something the business operations handles. So without further ado, let me run this and see and show you how the variables of this flow changes and what is the output out of it. Okay. So as you can see, while it's running, the values over here, it started changing, right? And I put a 20, but I forgot to save. So you can see the chicken price is below the average. That's what it's saying. And as you can see here on the right, the average price for chicken is 68.25, which is below 70, and that's why it's not saying that. But I'm still triggering email because it's the condition I put it is 20 here. So I need to correct that piece, as well as I need to fix that so that I can have the identical numbers across. But I don't want to keep changing my code everywhere, right? So what I can do is, just to show you quickly, I can use one of the variable at the top where I can say price limit, average price limit, right? And I would say 20, save. And I'm going to leverage that variable here so that I don't need to type those things again and again. Average price limit, and okay, we'll come back to that. All right, so the way I need to do it is shall I say number? All right, let's save it. And let's rerun the flow. Yeah, as you can see, the pop-up has changed. It's 6825, and email will still sent out. Right now, before we go further, I just want to show you certain things, the variables, values, before we move on to the presentation. So remember, we launch Excel or attach the process with Excel. This is the handle. Also, when we load the Excel data, it looks like this. It looks table format for sure, but somehow it was not taking it as a table. So I had to set up the table. And the PFX table, now it looks like this, the sheep quantity and all. And yeah, so lookup, it's extracted only one value. Whereas filter table has multiple. That's the difference between filter and lookup. So any questions before we move on to the presentation?
Yes, we have one. Can we launch an Excel even if we don't know the name of the file? Like take the latest Excel file in the folder path.
I'd never tried that, but if we because it has to be definite, right? Every time we want to use the last used file, then it might be doable, but I'm not sure how that. So you're thinking of the scenario where there is a bunch of Excel file into that folder and you want to make sure you always use the latest. That's the only scenario I can think of where that specific use case will be used. So I think it can be done. It just requires a little bit of extra work where you might need to identify the properties of the files. I never done it, to be frank, but yeah, for sure. I think it's logically it's possible. You just need to brainstorm that.
Yeah. And there's another
Yeah.
question. Is it faster to consume Excel files through Power Automate Desktop than Cloud Flows?
It all depends on how much data you're trying to load, right? Attaching to the existing file is faster, but when you're loading it, it's almost same. I wouldn't say any difference.
No further questions.
All right, wonderful. Going back to the presentation, I hope you're still able to see it. So I showed up a restaurant industry, the client I worked with recently, but I work with different variety of client base from financial institute to a mining sector and aerospace as well. So, and every client have more or less similar kind of requirement in different terms. So for example, the mining client, they have tons of equipment which require regular maintenance scheduling, right? For that mining operations. And that maintaining and alerting of those maintenance schedule, it's one of the tasks can be automated through Power Automate desktop or in conjunction with the Cloudflow and the desktop flow together. And it can be integrated with the Power BI desktop, and it can also include and integrated with any Power apps which can use to have those inventory set up or maintenance schedule set up, right? So I don't know why it's not taking it, but just give me 1 second. My quiz is supposed to work. I don't know why. Oh, just give me 1 second. Let me quickly log in into, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to quickly log into the Slido and we'll begin the quiz.
Yes, take your time.
Oh, wow. Okay. The poll was deleted. That's weird. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, so there's something wrong with my Slido, but I'm gonna put a QR code on and a link on a chat. If you guys can join that, that will be helpful.
Okay, 14 users already joined.
Okay. Okay.
70.
All right, so I'm just beginning the quiz. I'm gonna share my screen as well. So people out there can see it. What does this operator means? Yep. Correct answer. And there are some tricky questions and typos as well. I wish, I hope you guys are able to identify that, but let's say we'll talk when it comes. Yeah, second and the third both are correct. Sorry, second and fourth both are correct answers. It was a typo, but the people who selected both are correct. The second one, they use the lookup function, and the one which are selecting the fourth as answer, they have used filter. How would you calculate the total price if you have variable price and the variable quantity you want to multiply them? This is silly question. Yeah. How about this? If you want to check if variable status is either active or pending, which formula would you use? Yep, again, typo. And I think all are correct. You have a list of numbers stored in table, numbers table. How would you calculate the average of this number? There is also a tricky question. There are two ways to do it, but you're able to select only one. Yeah. So the reason I choose average function over sum and count, dividing them, because it's native and inbuilt. Last two question, guys. You need to find all the employees with the role of manager from the table, employee table. Which formula would you use? Yeah, so Filter is the correct answer because we want to find all the employees, not the first row, right? The last question, and very important question, because you're going to use this operator or syntax for every power effects you're going to create. Yeah. Okay. So I think we are done with the quiz, and here we go. Good job, everyone. I'm going back to my presentation quickly, and we'll wrap up soon. So the summary of key concept, I would say, Power Effects is nothing different from what you use in Excel. It just now being leveraged into not only the Power Apps, but Power Automate Desktop, and hopefully it will be released to different Power tools as well. We talk about data types, formulas, dynamic expression. We went through the demo of conditional logic as well. If you want to learn more, go to this website. They have the documentation. Microsoft still updating it, but it's still pretty useful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Or also, please don't forget to rate my session using this QR code. Any questions on the chat?
I have unmuted the microphones, so you can go unmute and ask the questions.
Okay.
There is a comment. We all are waiting for Power FX in Power Automate, not test.
Exactly. Yeah, me too. Same. So, Michal, I don't know if I'm supposed to show the slides or not, but there are a few slides. Yeah, okay. Yeah, please fill out the survey and win the swag. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You're getting into virtual reality. And thank you. This is again my LinkedIn QR code. If you have any questions later on, feel free to connect with me. I'm happy to help.